We're so glad you joined us, and we hope you enjoy the message today. We would love to hear about how God is working in or through you, so please take a moment to email us your story at story@awakenchurch.cc. If this ministry has blessed you and you would like to give financially towards the mission here at Awaken Church, you can do so online on our website at awakenchurch.cc/giving. This message comes from our Welcome Home series, where our pastor, Brandon, is sharing with us the power and purpose of one of Jesus' most famous parables. It's a story of pride and heartbreak mixed with redemption and hope. We trust that it will challenge and encourage you personally. Thanks again for joining us. We hope you enjoy the message today.
I want to just lay a foundation of God's word on top of the worship we just experienced. It's out of Luke 15. It's a story that's the backdrop for this entire series. It's kind of long. Y'all don't mind standing, do you? Nope. Good, because you're going to sit in a minute. So here we go. Jesus told him a story about a man who had two sons. Everybody say two sons. Two sons. The younger son told his father, "I want my share of your estate now before you die." And so his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Now, a few days later, the younger son packed up all his belongings and moved to a distant land. And there he wasted all his money in wild living. Now, about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land and he began to starve. Now, he persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him out into the fields to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him, but no one gave him anything. But when he finally came to his senses, hey, has anybody here ever been in a place where you had to come to your senses? God used a situation to wake you up a little bit, grab your attention. He came to his senses and he said to himself, hey, back home, even the hired servants have enough food to spare. And here I am dying of hunger. I will go home to my father and say, Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. And so he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. And filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, he embraced him, and he kissed him. And he said to him, the son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called to your son. But his father didn't even listen to him. He just called out to the servants, and he said, quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him, and get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And kill the calf that we've been fattening, for we must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine was dead, and he's now returned to life. He was lost, but now he's found. Anybody in the house been lost before? But God found you, and he ran to you, and he loved you, and he embraced you, and he kissed you. That's the God that we serve. So a party began inside. Meanwhile, say meanwhile. Meanwhile, the older brother. See, we call the story the prodigal son. Jesus didn't call it that. Jesus just told a story about two sons. The church for a long time has focused on the son that ran away. Because when we start talking about the son that stayed home, it hits us a little bit. Meanwhile, the older brother, the older son, was in the fields working. And when he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. The servant said, your brother's back, and your father has killed the fattened calf, so we are celebrating because of his safe return. And the older brother was angry and would not go in. His father came out and begged him, but he replied, listen, all these years I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to do. And in all that time, you never even gave me a young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. And his father said to him, look, dear son, you've always stayed by me and everything I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day. For your brother was dead and has come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. Today, I want to take a few moments and preach a sermon to the older brothers in the room or that may be listening online. Now, I know this is the 11 o'clock hour, and so there's no older brothers in here. The older brothers get up. The church people get up at, 7 o'clock, do their quiet time, drink their coffee, and they're here piping at 9. Y'all slept in. Y'all understand grace, right? I know we don't have a lot of older brothers at the 11 o'clock, but the reality is older brother is not so much a person as it is a spirit that can creep up inside of us. And honestly, the longer that you're in church, the more susceptible you are to that actually happening. I want to talk to the older brothers today that may worry more than they worship, that may tend to be more critical than they tend to celebrate, that may throw shots at people, may throw accusations, may throw judgments before they throw encouragement and love and hope. And I want to talk to the big brothers in the house, the people that have been around the church for a while, been around the house, been faithful to the house, but maybe have forgotten why it is that we do what we do in the first place. So if you would please, before you sit down, I'd like for you to turn to the person behind you, not beside you, the person behind you, because you probably don't know them. And I want you to tell them this morning, hey, watch out for Big Brother. That's the title of the sermon. Watch out for Big Brother, and then go ahead and take your seat. So, wow, this is incredible, man. Y'all look around. God's filling the house up. 9 o'clock look the same. This is great. If you have not invited somebody to come with you to church, you should. It's a cool place. I love hearing the stories that come out of the audience each week. I love hearing the connections, how people got here, why they got here, where they came from. And I was talking to a couple in the foyer between services. And man, it's just so cool. Like I was talking to them, they said we got invited multiple times, but then we just finally decided to come. It was their second time here. And so some of you, like you maybe you've invited somebody and they don't come the first time or the second time, just keep asking. You never know when it might actually hit them or when they might actually need the church. But I look across the room and I wish that I could know every single story sitting in here. I wish that I could know your background, know the circumstances that got you in this place. It helps to know the audience. It helps to know who you're actually speaking to. My very first sermon that I ever preached to students, I was a youth pastor for 9 years, and my very first sermon was at a church in Gaffney, South Carolina, Midway Baptist Church. Now, it was little. There was, I went there. They had never hired a full-time youth minister, and so they decided that I would be that guy. So in some ways, I was a sacrificial lamb. I was the guinea pig. I didn't know what I was getting into. But at the time, I was a young, fiery, 22-year-old dude, fresh out of college, and all I wanted to do was change the world. So I was like, you know what? The assignment God's given me is Gaffney, and I got Midway Baptist Church, and so they voted me in. And they had Brandon Bowers as their youth minister. Now, I'd never met any of the youth there, so I didn't know what the kids were like. Now, most of you know, youth ministry is a reflection of the kids. And so I move up to Gaffney, and I see some of them in the worship service, really disengaged. I didn't blame them. I kind of felt the same way when I got in there. It was not my style of worship, per se. And I decided we needed to have a youth service. You know, every good youth ministry needs to have a little youth service. And so this is back in 2002. And I was like, you know what? We need a place to do this. So we need a youth room. And so they gave me a youth room, which was essentially the reject preschool room. So it was the room that the preschool wasn't using. It was not in commission. And this was a small room, y'all. I'm talking about like maybe half the size of this platform up here. And I was like, that's what we got to work with. We will change the world starting with what we have right now. And so we went in there and we renovated the space and painted some walls. And I set up about 15 chairs because that's all it would hold. I knew I had about that many students. And I will never forget our first night of service. Now listen, I announced to the church, we got a youth service. You need to bring your friends. We're going to fill this room up. They didn't know how big the room was, you know. I'm just like, we're going to fill the room. And we did. We filled it up that night. 15 kids, maybe 13. One of them was a mom in the back that didn't trust me with the kids yet. So I had like some supervision, chaperone. I would later call her a youth worker, right? Give her a role. And because she never left. She was a little helicopter parent. But the first night of our youth service, it was just me. I had no worship team, right? So y'all roll up in here on Sundays right now, and it's like, hey, well, Tevin, one of our community pastors, welcomes you. We got an incredible worship team up here. I was the whole show back at Midway Baptist Church. So you roll up at, the Wednesday night service, and I'm the greeting team. What's up? You ready? Yeah, I'm ready. We going in? Yeah, we're going to worship tonight. That's good. I'm serving the pizza. When it was time for the worship to start, I had a little CD player. and I had to lead worship with CDs. Some of y'all don't know how good you have it up in this place. But I will never forget the first night. I dial up that CD. I'm like, hey, let's pray. We're about to worship. Let's go. I pray, and I go over, and I put the CD in, and I hit play. Y'all heard the song, I Can Only Imagine? I went in that hard on the first song. First service, Midway Baptist Church. And I will not forget, I'm sitting there singing that song. It's like, surrounded by your glory, what will my heart feel? And I'm eyes closed getting after it, and I peek, is it catching on? I'm looking at them, and I got my dude, Bryce, just sitting, not my son, but this kid, Bryce, played baseball. He's just sitting there eating like a Happy Meal, looking at me, fries and ketchup, going, what have we got ourselves here? And I was like, this is bizarre. Girl painting her nails over on the second row, and we had a lot of work to do, Midway Baptist Church. And, it helps to know who you're talking to. I had no clue. I was going in blank. I'm thinking, man, maybe these kids at least know how to sing, but I did what I could with what I had. Here's the deal. When we look at Jesus, and this story, Luke 15, I just read to you, master storyteller, always knew who his audience was. Always knew exactly who he was speaking to, never said anything accidental. Every single word that he spoke was intentional. And this story that we have, I want to remind you of the context. We have two groups of people that are sitting in front of Jesus this day. We have the Pharisees, who were the religious teachers and their students. And then we also have notorious sinners and prostitutes. That's the crowd that day. So I want you to imagine these two sides, because there's no chance they would have been rubbing shoulders with each other. So we got the sinners over here and the saints over here, and they were not mixing with each other. So Jesus tells them a story about two sons. Last week, we talked about the prodigal son, the one who ran away, squandered everything, like lived wild, was crazy, lived in Vegas, did his thing, and then finally came humbly back home. Today, we're looking at the son that stayed home, that never left, that faithfully worked in the fields, stayed close to his dad at the house, but was just as lost. See, this is a story about two sons, not just one. And what Jesus is saying at this moment in the story, he's looking at these Pharisees and he's like, okay, I just talked about all the sinners. This is a word for the saints in the house. This is the word for the ones who've been in church your whole life. They grew up going to vacation Bible school, that have been Christians for decades. This is a word for you. So it's time to actually listen up, because you can be just as lost at the house. Let me say that again. You can be in this house, the house called church, as close as you can get to the Father and still be lost. This is a story about two sons who were lost. So I want to pick it up, because Big Brother, here's the thing. Big Brother is the critical one. Big Brother is the one that, when he gets word that his brothers come home. Now, I don't know how you'd respond, but we're told that when his brother comes home, he immediately starts making some accusations against his little brother. He immediately begins to assume some things that a young man had done while he was out, far distant land, wild living. He starts saying, he wasted all your money on prostitutes. And I've always wondered, how did he know that? How did he know that's what he did with the money? Was he getting, like telegrams? Was it the talk of the town? Because word gets out. Was it a report from a servant? Was everybody whispering? I believe it was the assumptions. I believe it was a projection of what his little brother was doing, because that's what he would be doing if he could have left the house. But he never decided to leave. See, Big Brother always brings the judgment. And Big Brother's judgment is always incredibly critical and usually based on assumptions. See, some of you here may be going, am I a Big Brother? Am I not? Like, how do I know who I am in this story? Some of these characteristics and traits that I hit on, just ask yourself, is this how you think about people on the outside? Is this how you think about people in your life? Big Brothers always bring the judgment. I have never been able to understand critical and condemning Christians. In fact, it drives me crazy. Those of you that know me really well know one of my pet peeves is when Christians, particularly pastors, stand up and ridicule other Christians or pastors. When they get up and speak negatively and throw daggers at and throw darts at, and the accusations of and the assumptions of are a terrible thing. Whenever I was at my Second church. Y'all just like, he's going to bash every church he ever served right now. I'm not, I promise. But this speaks to this point. I didn't know what judgmental looked like until I landed at the second church that I served in Aiken, South Carolina. An incredible church, great people. But when I got there as a youth minister, they had bought Orion's Steakhouse that had gone out of business. How many of y'all like Ryan's? Good. It got leveled by Golden Corral because we upgraded, right? But the Ryans were going out of business. And so what happened was the church bought the Ryans and were like, hey, we're going to make this into a youth building. And so when I came into Millbrook Baptist Church, they were like, that's your building. Here's a budget. Flip it. Make it an incredible place for students. And I was like, man, that is so dangerous to give me that budget in that building and say, go for it. But we did. We made it a little club. It was awesome. And we ripped the ceiling out and made it all black and made it contemporary. We played cool music. And the church on a Sunday morning, any given Sunday morning, Millbrook Baptist Church had zero diversity. Zero diversity. And so when we started having services in our youth building called The Rock, that's a good name, ain't it? The Rock. Come to The Rock on Wednesday nights. That's what we told people. Come to The Rock. And we played music as loud as we could. It's kind of like coming up out here. But when we started having services on Wednesday night, we were attracting students that would not typically ever step foot into the sanctuary that was built at the church. This massive 1,500-seat sanctuary that was brand new. And so as these students were coming in, and some of them were getting saved, and the music was loud, and it was growing, but we couldn't quite get the families of these students connected on a Sunday morning, even though we were seeing some of them baptized. I remember getting called into a meeting, a committee meeting. Y'all know about committees? All right, if you know about committees, you're probably a little bit like a big brother, okay? Because everybody awakens like, what's a committee? That's right. We don't have them. But I got called into a committee meeting. And in this committee meeting, started getting some questions about, hey, what's going on down there at the Rock? What kind of music is it? What kind of music? Is it Christian music? I'm like, yes, it's Christian rap music. I know it's not good, but they're trying, trying to keep up with the game. What are the families coming to church? Because we're funding the student ministry, so like we need to be reaching their families too, not just the kids. And I'm like, man, just give it time. We've only been at this thing for a couple months, and I started to realize in this conversation, feeling all this judgment, feeling all these assumptions, just this criticism of like, where is this coming from? We're on the same team. Like, we're trying to reach this community. I don't care at what point their families come in. Like, dude just got saved, And I started to feel this sense of like, where is this judgment and criticism and accusation and assumptions coming from? And what I quickly realized is that the big brother can even be on committees at churches because the big brother has a judgmental heart. And a judgmental heart always assumes and typically assumes the worst. Big brother goes, oh, that kid was baptized? Or let me bring it to today. They were baptized. We'll see if it takes. I mean, time will tell. Time will tell if that person's really saved. Let's just give it a couple months and we'll see how they're actually living. So, I don't know. Big brothers, that person only serves. The reason they're on a team is so they get noticed. They want people to think good of them. So that's why they're serving. It's the always questioning the motives behind why people do something. That they're on the worship team just because they like to perform. That's why, I don't have to be like that. Those people lifting their hands like, come on, man. Like, it gets too emotional. Chill out, hands in the pockets. Just that church is all about the numbers. They don't care about the people. They're just about the numbers. And it's these accusations and assumptions that come from this judgmental place that is not from the Lord at all, right? Like it's just this judgment and always assuming the worst. And that's what we have in this story because the little brother comes home and there's this celebration taking place and he's standing on the outside. And when his dad comes out to beg him to come in, he's like, hey, you're the one, you don't even know what he did. Like he was out there squandering your money and sleeping with, and he's like, we don't even know if that's true. And it probably was not true. But he needed it to be true to support his position of why he wasn't going to celebrate with everybody at the house. Can I just tell you something, that there's a lot of big brothers that sit in churches and make assumptions or judgments or accusations or question motives that are unmerited in so many ways, but it validates their inability to worship or engage or serve or give. And so they need these things to be true so that they don't have to go in. I was reading an article that got posted this past week online about why people don't worship in church, why people don't sing. And a couple of the points in the article were like, well, they don't know the songs. That's valid. Okay, if you don't know the song, it's kind of hard to sing. That the songs are sung in a different pitch that are hard for people to sing. Some of you are like, amen, that's true. That's why I don't sing. I'm giving you some reasons right now, okay? That they're not hymns. So like we can't follow along in the songs. I'll post this on my blog so y'all can read it. It's pretty comical. I was sitting there reading the article about all these reasons why people don't worship. And what I thought to myself is maybe the reason people don't worship is they just don't love Jesus. Like maybe the reason, because listen, I don't know if y'all ever sat down here. I usually sit on the second row right here, and there's new songs that we sing. Some of them I don't even know. Some of them I don't like. Honestly, we sing some songs sometimes I'm like, I don't really like that song. But you know what? I'm going to sing the best that I can, and I'm going to try my best to outsing Andrew Kerr because I got something to sing about, And I don't care if I don't know the song. I don't care if I don't know it. And maybe the reason we come in and we're like, I ain't really going to engage. I don't like that song. Or they ain't playing my song. Some of y'all are excited today because we play Reckless Love. You're like, that's my jam. I got my worship on today, But we play a song you hadn't heard before, and you're like, man, that wasn't a good service. I ain't even going to try. I ain't going to try. It's crazy what can happen when we allow a cynical and critical spirit to creep in and we start just throwing shots. That's what the big brother does. That's what religion will end up doing to you. And that's what we have in the story, man. We got a big brother standing outside just casting so much judgment on his little brother, and he don't even know enough about him, and he doesn't care to go in and even hear his story about what happened. Can I tell you why I love the groups at Awaken Church? You get to know people's stories. You get to hear what God's done in their life. You get to hear their testimony. It may not be yours, and it's probably different than yours, but you at least get to hear it. You get to hear what God's done. You get to celebrate with what he's done. You get to know the story. And can I tell you, the sad thing is that so many people exist in churches all across our city, all across our country, and they don't actually get to know the stories of the people walking in. They look across the foyer and see a single mom come in with 2 kids and start immediately making judgments. Or they look across the foyer and they see a couple walk in that rode in on the same car and don't have wedding bands and immediately start making judgments about their sin. Or they look across the foyer and they see somebody walking in here who's got some tattoos and it's like, oh boy, stay back. They're holding the kids back, what in the world? It's like, get to know their story. Wait, who are you? What's God done in your life? Get to know somebody. It will only strengthen your faith along the way. That's why I love the groups here. But big brothers aren't going to get in a group because they're too judgmental, too critical, and don't want to get close to anybody else. They'd prefer to just stand outside the party, let the music begin, and not go in. It's exactly what happens here. Second thing is this. I'm trying to help you know if you're the big brother or not. Big brothers do not and will not participate in the party. Verse 25, this is what we find. So the party's going on inside. The party began. Verse 25 says, meanwhile, everybody say meanwhile. Meanwhile, what Jesus is saying is there's another story taking place. While the party's going on, meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. And when he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. What's the house in this story? The house in this story is the church. The house in this story is the temple. The house in this story, Jesus is talking, yes, about a physical home, but he's talking to them about their religion and where their religion and their practices of religion took place. The house in this story is the church. And there's a lot of faithful people, big brothers, in the church who have been doing church for a long time. But with no joy, with no music, with no dancing, it's just a duty. It's a work. In other words, you show up on Sunday, sit in a pew, recite a few prayers, maybe sing through some hymns, and then get up and leave and don't really talk to anybody, only just for next week to roll around and come in and do the same thing, leave, come back, leave, come back. The house was different on this day when Big Brother got home. Imagine every other day when Big Brother came home from work, right? He comes home and He's been working hard. He's sweating, callous hands. This dude is faithful, man. And he comes in, showers up, and he sits down at the dinner table and looks across, and there's his dad. And Dad's like, how were the fields? How was work today? Oh, it was good. It was good. The crops are good. They're growing. Things looking good out there. I worked them hard today, Dad. Had to cut a man loose. He couldn't hang. It's all work. It's all business. It's no relationship. It's just duty. It's no delight. That's what we have in this older brother. But on this day, when he comes walking home and he gets close to the house, what's going on at the house? They got a party going on, right? You got music. You got dancing. And he walks up and he's like, what's going on back home? Because nobody asked me about it. We can't throw a party if I didn't vote on it. And he calls a servant, hey, what's all that about? Servant's like, hey, look, your brother's back. Your brother's back. Your dad killed that, killed babe, killed the pig. Like, we're having a party. You need to come inside. And he is so mad. He's so mad. See, his house looked different because there was something worth celebrating. Can I tell you, churches that have something to celebrate look a lot different than churches that don't celebrate. In other words, there's a different sound that comes out of the house when lost people are found, when what was dead comes alive, and when life change is taking place. The church looks a lot different. And on this day, he comes home, there's music, there's dancing in the house. He's told, your brother is back. Verse 28, the older brother was angry and he wouldn't go in. He just stands outside and he's like, I'm not having this. So dad comes out and he begs him to please come into the party. How many of y'all ever been to a middle school dance? Just put your hand up. I just want to make sure I'm not alone up in here. My first middle school dance, I was in 6th grade. By the way, if you're raising children, I've got a 6th grader. Next year, my oldest son, Brayley, is going into 6th grade. If there's a middle school dance at C.E. Williams, I'm not letting him go as a 6th grader. All right? It's too early. But actually, I probably will. I'll coach him a little bit. Because when I went, 6th grade's an awkward age for a boy. Can we just say that? Oh, I'm sorry, for a young man. 6th grade, puberty. I had glasses, overweight. Every girl was taller than me. That's middle school, Ask a girl out, you're like, yo, here's a note. Will you go out with me? Looking up. Sad. Some of y'all hit the gene pool and y'all like, nah, I was a stud all the way through. That's fine. I wasn't. 6th grade, I show up to a middle school dance, and the way they had it set up was in the cafeteria. All right, so in the cafeteria, moved the tables out of the way. We had this little stage. We had music going, and I remember getting dropped off by my mom, which is just not cool. But you're in middle school. Everybody's got to get dropped off. Except for that, one kid that's in 8th grade that's been in middle school for 2 years. He's driving. You're like, and you want to be him in that moment, And some of you, if that was y'all, I love you, but I was jealous of you. But getting dropped off, and I remember going into the dance, and there's the buffet line over here, and then, what's kind of like a dance floor over there. People were just kind of lined up, moving around, and you had people watching, wanting to get in, but couldn't. And I'm like, I got to have a strategy right here because I don't belong in this room. I can't dance, but I'm here. I showed up. Half of life's just showing up. I'm going to show up and I'm going to figure it out. And then I realized there were some double doors open off to the right. And I look outside, and there were some people. There were some of my friends, my 6th graders. I was like, scoot, I'm out. I'm going to hang out outside. And outside they're playing hacky sack and stuff. Ain't no girls out there. It's just all dudes. I'm like, what's up, fellas? Y'all doing all right? Trying to act cool. And I hung out outside. Now, inside, you hear the music. You hear the party going on. There's people dancing, people eating, the punch and all that stuff. And I was outside the whole time. And I got picked up. Mom's like, hey, did you enjoy it? Yeah, it was great. Did you dance? Yeah, of course I danced. It was wonderful, She taught at the school. She knew I was lying. But long story short, I didn't know what to do. Fast forward to my 7th grade year. By 7th grade, I'd met some new friends that had taught me a little bit of culture, taught me some songs I didn't know previously. I'd bought me a Boys in the Hood soundtrack tape. That's the first tape I ever owned. Used to keep it under my mattress, play it when my mom wasn't home. I learned some new songs. So when I went back in 7th grade to the dance and I walked up in there, I had a little confidence. And I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, dance floor, I can get in on that. And so a year later, I'd met some new people and I'd been exposed to some new things. And so when we started riding that train, I was actually on the dance floor. I was no longer outside, right? And I remember that dance and that experience was so much better than hanging outside playing hacky sack. But sometimes you don't know what to do when you get into a place where there's actually celebration and you've had no exposure. That's why some of y'all roll up in Awaken Church and you're like, why are we clapping at baptisms? This is supposed to be a reverent moment. Or why do they raise their hands in worship? I'm just going to stand here like this, my hands in my pockets, or I'm just going to cross my arms. And I saw the young people going after it up front, you know? Like, you start just making accusations, and it's like, you don't even know how to celebrate. Big brothers will not celebrate. Big brothers will stand back and go, oh, that's for them. I outgrew that. That's for them. I'm more mature. I'm just here for the work. I got work to do. I showed up for church. I read my Bible. I gave my tithe. You know, it becomes this, I'm faithfully working in the fields, but in reality, it's like, hey, maybe all that work and all that you're doing, you've lost sight of the reason why you're doing it. Maybe the reason that your worship has no celebration is that it doesn't have substance. Maybe the reason that there's no expression when the music kicks up is there hasn't been this real experience of grace. There's a story in Jesus' life where he raised Lazarus from the dead. We know that story, right? Lazarus died, and a couple days later, Jesus goes in and raises him back to life. And later on, Lazarus is at a house. There was a dinner party, and Lazarus was there, and Jesus was invited, and Jesus is the honored guest. And as he sits at this house, this woman comes in, Mary Magdalene comes into this party. And when she comes in, she gets down on her knees, right? Like there's all these people there, and she gets down on her knees and like begins to weep and like wash Jesus' feet with her hair. Can you imagine how awkward that is? Like when you leave here today and go to Jim and Nick's or O'Charlie's or Chipotle, walk up in there and get on your knees and start washing somebody's feet. It was strange. She comes in with this expensive perfume, drops to her knees, and starts washing her feet. And people sitting there are like, what is this woman doing? See, Big Brother be like, man, she just wants to be noticed. Big Brother's like, man, you are wasting that money on his feet. You should give it to the poor. Big Brother starts throwing condemnation at Mary Magdalene. And Jesus speaks up and says, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. When I came into your house today, you didn't even wash my feet. In fact, when I came into your house, you didn't so much as even give me a basin of water or a towel to wash my own feet. Yet this woman comes in and she's on her knees washing my feet with her hair in this perfume. Here's why. Jesus tells him why. He says, she's been forgiven much, so she loves much. She's been forgiven much, so she loves much. See, your standard of worship will match your understanding of grace. And worship isn't just about singing songs. Worship is about giving, yes, it's about lifting your hands and singing songs, yes, but it's also about giving your time. Right? It's about giving your time because Big Brother's like, okay, fine. I'll give an hour and a half a month to serve somebody if you make me. It's about giving your money. Okay, I'll give something, you know, I'll tip the offering plate, give every now and then. See, Big Brother comes from this angle of like, hey, I have to do what? Jesus says, look, the level at which you understand my grace and my forgiveness and my love, that's what your worship will match. And if you don't understand that, you're never going to engage in full-on worship. Because this older brother, man, working in the fields, faithful, we look at him, we're like, he stayed home, he did what he was supposed to do, he never left, he was doing everything right. He's pleading his case here. But it's like, man, you have lost sight of what family is. Your brother is back. Your brother came home. It's time to go into the party. Listen, I can't speak for you, but like I said earlier, when I come into this house, I view Sundays as a celebration. I do. I love coming in here. I love when the music cranks up. I love praising. I love worship. There's times I don't know the words. I sing anyway, right? There's times I know I'm going to look weird lifting my hands. I do it anyway because I don't worship for you. I worship for him, right? Like there's times where I come in here and it's like, man, I don't feel like worshiping. There's times I don't feel like, you ever been that way? You come into church limping. It's been a hard week. And And you're like, man, I actually don't feel like worshiping this morning. I don't feel like preaching. But can I tell you something? The days that I come in that I don't feel like worshiping, but I force myself to worship, it puts me in a posture of actually receiving something God has for me. And so if we wait until we feel like worshiping, then all we're ultimately doing is worshiping ourselves. Because we're going, hey, I'll offer it up when I want to and when I feel like it. Not because I'm called to, and Jesus says that I need to worship him because he's forgiven me, because he loves me. See, this young man, the older brother, did not feel like going into the party. Dad says, please, son, come in. Please, son, come in. And he said, I won't, and I want you to realize this is why. And this is really the kicker. You go, all this boils down to one point, and that is this. Big brothers are entitled. Big brothers are entitled. An entitlement mentality that somehow I deserve what I have. Or I deserve something that I don't yet have. Look at his response when the dad comes out and begins begging with him to come into the party. Now keep in mind, right behind him, okay? We got the house, we got the music, we got the dancing, we got the celebration, all joy next door, but right outside the house, his dad's going, please come in. Like, please come inside, please. And look at his response. He says, Dad, all these years, I've slaved for you and never once refused to do a single thing that you told me to. And in all that time, you never gave me even one young goat to feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, not my brother, when this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fattened calf. The older brother says, you're the one that called the party. You're the one that didn't give me what I wanted. You're the one that's throwing this feast for him. You never gave me anything, even though I've been slaving for you. His identity is so misplaced right here. He thinks that somehow the Father should love him because of what he's doing. And can I tell you, that's what religion will teach you. Religion will teach you that if you come to church every week and if you give a certain amount of money and you sacrifice enough of your time and you go to group every single week, that religion will teach you that if you do these things, somehow God will love you more. But grace teaches you that because God loves you more, you do all those things. It's all about motivation and how you look at it. But this older brother's like, hey, I deserved a goat and you didn't give me a goat. Like you've never even appreciated what I've done. There's nothing that will kill a church faster than a spirit of entitlement. That somehow we deserve this, that we earn this, that I was out at a pastor's retreat several years ago. This was back in 2016, so 2 years ago. And at the time, our church, Awaken Church, some of you were here, many of you weren't. But at the time, our church had been kicked out of a church we were renting in this city. We had gone through this capital campaign to raise money to get into this facility debt-free. Our staff, including myself, had no idea what we were doing. We were in over our heads. The church was growing rapidly. Was nervous about moving across the river. We used to be in West Ashley, and I'm like, hey, West Ashley people ain't driving to North Chuck. That proved to be false. We were, at the time, doing 6 weeks of setup and tear down at Bees Landing Recreational Center. Every single Saturday, we'd go in there and set up 500 chairs and set up a stage and set up speakers and set up screens, and kids were having to set up. And so Saturdays were hard, Sundays were hard, Easter fell in the middle of that. In the midst of that, we had this entire build out that we were trying to manage as far as construction. And I can tell you, I was almost drowning. And in the middle of that, God allowed me to go out to Texas to a pastor's retreat at Prestonwood Church. Prestonwood Church is pastored by Dr. Jack Graham, 36,000 member church. He's an incredibly faithful, incredibly successful leader and pastor. And I was sitting at this table. It was about 10 of us, him and about 10 pastors and church planners. And he was like, I want you just to go around and share like what God's doing, like we want to be able to pray for each other and get some context of where we're serving. And I'm sitting here thinking, I don't know if I should share a little bit, if I should share a lot. I don't want to come off as a whiner because nobody likes whiners, but I felt like whining, you know what I'm talking about? Some of y'all men can understand. You won't whine to her, but you do it in the car to yourself. You just sit there and talk to yourself. You're like, I don't even understand, this is not fair, I've been there. I was sitting in that room, and when the sharing time got around to me, I was like, yeah, man, it's been a hard year at Awaken Church. We're 2 years old, and God's grown our church tremendously, but that's got us kicked out of this church that we were in, and we're in this build-out project, getting our own space, and been in these capital campaigns and these meetings trying to get people who don't have a whole lot of money to give sacrificially, and people tapping out their life savings to help pay for this facility. I got a staff that, is not really experienced, doesn't really know what they're doing. I'm in over my head. I'm trying to muster up enough energy and passion to preach every single week at this church after we set up and tear down in this, recreational center, these 500 chairs. And Pastor Jack looks at me in that moment and he goes, you got to change your perspective. Like you've said, you have to do all this. You get to do this. You get to be a part of a church that's grown like this, that God's grown. You get to lead that church. You get to serve on a team rather than having to serve by yourself as a church planner like so many do around this country. You get to see people give sacrificially, and they're going to see God move in a mighty way through their giving. You get to preach every single Sunday because somewhere there's a young punk waiting to take your microphone. You get to do this. You need to change your perspective. You don't deserve any of this. You get to do this. And everything shifted for me in that moment. Because what entitlement will do is go, hey, this is hard. I'm not getting what I deserve. I didn't sign up for this. Entitlement will make a group leader get to a place where they're like, wait, I got to host group tonight? 13 people showing up. I don't want to make dinner. I don't want to clean the house. It'll make you forget that a couple years ago, you went stumbling into a group and somebody loved you and embraced you and encouraged you and helped you on your journey of faith. Entitlement will go, I ain't serving in kids. Why would I ever serve in A-Kids? I don't have any kids. Nobody gets noticed in A-Kids. Why would I serve back there? Entitlement will go, I've done my time. I served my time. When you forget that it's actually keeping those kids that allows lost parents to come into this room and meet Jesus. See, entitlement will go, why would I do that? That's not noticed. Entitlement will go, why do I have to tithe my money? Why should I tithe to the church? I have to give. Entitlement will make you think you have to. When you understand grace, you realize you get to. You get to, and every time you give and you see people come up out of these waters brought from death to life, you were a part of that. See, entitlement will rip your spirit of joy. It'll make you forget how God's using you and what he's doing in your life and how he's working through you. But if you can shift your perspective from I have to do this to I get to do this, you'll start to see amazing things start to happen in your life. This young man, this older brother, is standing outside the party. The dad's like, come inside. He's like, I'm not coming in there. I'm not coming in to celebrate. I don't want to be a part of that. I deserve the party, not him. I'm the one that's been faithful, not him. Why didn't you do it for me? Me. And I want us to look at what the dad says back. Because it's in this moment, right, that we learn a lot about the father. Because he could have just laid into him, right? He could have been like, you're wrong, you're off, you ain't even that good of a worker. He could have said a lot of things, but look at what the dad says to him. The dad looks right back at him and he says, look, son, everything I have is yours. Everything I have is yours. And it's always been yours. Everything I have. What do you want? You want the goat? Have the goat. You want a party? Let's throw a party. You want the house? Have the house. It's all yours. And I can't help but think about the big brothers in the house. What's it going to take? What's God got to do for some of y'all to get you to the place of actually worshiping him? What's God got to do in your life? He's brought you from death to life. He's healed you from emotional wounds and physical wounds and spiritual wounds. He's brought you to a place where your feet are now firmly upon a rock. You were lost and now you're found. He's given you, he's blessing your business. He's blessing your home. He's given you a spouse. Some of y'all up in this house, he's given you a spouse. He's given you a godly community. Like God has done so much already. And I imagine him looking back at the big brothers in our midst today going, what else do I have to do? What else do you want? What else do you need? See, I want you to check your heart today. All of us need to check our hearts. Are we entitled in this house? Or do we realize that the Father is a Father of love and of grace, and he's handing it out freely? And when we see people who walk in these doors so far from God, and we see the lost get found, are we celebrating? Are we praising? Are we excited for that? Are we taking that for granted? And for those of us who have been walking with Jesus for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, when we come in, are we still in the place where we're like, man, I can't wait to celebrate the Father today. I can't wait to celebrate who he is and what he's done. I can't wait to worship today because I got a God who's been so, so good to me. That's what he wants from us. He wants us to stop looking in on the celebration that we call church and start participating in this place. And it's time. Today is time for some of you to cross that threshold. And it may be as simple as taking your hands out of your pockets and worship. It may be a little deeper to where you stop tipping the offering plate and you actually start tithing because God called you to it. It may be that today's the day that you actually repent, right? Like you're on a path and you're in a relationship and you're dealing with some substances and you're doing some things you shouldn't do. And today you actually repent, which means you turn the other way and you walk away from those things and you've known that you need to do it. But today may be the day that you actually do it. Whatever it is that God's calling you to today, I want to invite you to respond to his voice. And just like the Father's pleading with his son here, please come in, please come in, please come in. He was lost, now he's found. Please come in. I'm a God of grace. I'm a God of love. Please come in. We're here to celebrate, not condemn. Please come in. There's a party going on, and I want you to participate in it. That's what I'm begging you to do as a church. To step forward and realize what we get to be a part of is amazing. We get to worship. We get to serve. We get to give. We get to go to groups. We get to give our lives away because we had someone that did it for us. Would you stand with me? I want to pray for us, and then we're going to sing and worship and then observe some baptisms here this morning. Father, I thank you so much that today when we come into this place, we get to worship you. And Lord, I know that the spirit of the big brother dwells in the hearts of some in this room, Lord. I know that criticism and judgment and cynicism and selfishness, entitlement, God, these are not from you. These are from the enemy. And so today, I pray that you would rid our hearts of those things. I don't believe anyone here wants to be in that place. I don't believe that there's anyone here that wants to be critical and wants to be angry and wants to be upset, Lord. So I pray by your Spirit right now, Lord, you would bring them into a place of celebration and you would bring them to participate in the party, God, and you would take them from this place of entitlement to this place of appreciation. And we would humbly come before you and celebrate and praise and worship this morning. It's in Jesus, your powerful name, that we pray and lift up your name. Amen.